I didn't know a man could die standing up. Not until the day a cruise worker looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sir, this ticket is one way." Now, if you've lived long enough, you know certain words make your bones colder than the weather ever could. One way is one of them. Especially when you're 68, standing at Port Canaveral with a small suitcase, thinking your only child sent you on a trip to rest. Fun, isn't it? You raise a kid, teach him to swim, pay for braces, bury his mother alone, work yourself half to death, and one random Thursday morning the universe leans down and whispers, "You're not wanted anymore." But before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you how close I came to stepping on that ship and disappearing forever, let me take you back to the exact moment the air disappeared from my lungs. The boarding line moved slowly, the scent of sunscreen floating around me. Families hugged. Couples laughed. You could hear the ocean slapping calmly against the hull like it had all the time in the world. But my son, he stood beside me stiff as a fence post. His name is Brandon. Not that the name matters much anymore. He kept checking his watch, kept nudging me forward, kept muttering, "Dad, let's just get you through security." He sounded nervous, like someone hiding a bruise beneath his shirt. But I shook the thought away. Old men do that. We trust too easily, even when something inside us scratches at the ribs. We reached the counter. The attendant smiled politely, scanned my ticket, and her eyebrows flicked up in surprise. "Oh, you're not returning with us?" My spine tightened. "What do you mean?" I asked. She flipped the screen toward me. There it was. One way. Final destination, Nassau. No return scheduled. I felt something sink in my stomach, so heavy I swear it hit the floor. I turned to my son slowly, like my neck was rusted metal. He wouldn't look at me. "Brandon," I said, voice shaking, "why is this a one-way ticket?" He let out a breath that wasn't relief, but resignation. "Dad, don't start. It's for your own good. I explained this." "You didn't explain anything." The attendant cleared her throat. "Sir, do you understand this is permanent travel? Passengers disembark in Nassau and are responsible for their own—" My hearing blurred. Everything washed into a thick hum except the pounding of my own heart. Brandon stepped in quickly. "My dad gets confused sometimes. It's fine." I snapped my head toward him. "Boy," I hissed, "I was doing my own taxes while you were still confusing your left shoe from your right. Don't you dare call me confused." His eyes widened. Fear? Guilt? I still don't know. "Dad, please," he said, lowering his voice, "don't make a scene." You'd be shocked how often grown children talk to their aging parents like they're misbehaving toddlers. But here's the thing. I wasn't confused. I wasn't misbehaving. I wasn't losing my mind. My son was trying to get rid of me, and I wasn't supposed to find out. My hands trembled as I reached over the counter and asked the attendant for the full booking details. She hesitated, but printed them. The paper was warm against my fingers. And then the blow came. The payment wasn't from my son's account. It wasn't from a travel voucher. It wasn't a gift. The cruise had been paid using my retirement account. My vision pulsed. The edges went dark. I tasted metal in my mouth. My son stole my life savings to ship me away. He didn't even deny it. "Dad, I had to," he whispered sharply. "You were becoming too much. I'm drowning, all right? Your bills, the house, everything. This trip, it's a reset. For both of us." Both of us. What a gentle way to say, disappear quietly so I can breathe. I stepped backward, needing something to hold on to, and found the cold railing behind me. My legs shook so badly I thought I'd collapse. The crowd around us blurred, like I'd sunk underwater. I wanted to speak. I wanted to yell. But grief hits old men differently. It doesn't come out in screams. It comes out in silence. A security officer approached, sensing tension. "Everything all right here?" Brandon jumped in fast. "Yes, officer, my father is just—" I jabbed a finger toward his face. "Finish that sentence and see what confusion really looks like." The officer paused. People stared. A mother pulled her child a little closer. And that humiliation, that public moment where your own flesh and blood tries to paint you as incompetent, that's the kind of wound that never fully heals. But then something even stranger happened. From behind Brandon, someone tugged lightly on my sleeve. A soft voice whispered, "He didn't plan this alone." It was his girlfriend. Eyes red, hand shaking. She looked terrified. Before I could ask a single question, she slipped back into the crowd like she'd said too much already. And just like that, the story changed. The betrayal deepened. The hook sharpened. The anger in my ribs turned into something colder, something patient. Brandon looked at me then, really looked. "Dad, don't fight this." I straightened up. The shaking stopped, my breath steadied, and I whispered the sentence that would haunt him later. "Son, you forgot who I am. Old men don't break. Old men plan." He swallowed hard, and I walked away from that port with nothing, except a rising fire in my chest, and a certainty sharper than any knife. This wasn't just my son's idea. Someone else wanted me gone. Before everything fell apart at that cruise terminal, my life was simple, quiet, predictable in the way only old age can make things predictable. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe somewhere along the line, simplicity turns into invisibility. I lived in a modest little place in Clearwater, Florida. Nothing fancy, just a tan stucco house with a screened porch, one creaky rocking chair, and a stubborn basil plant that thrived no matter how many times I forgot to water the damn thing. Every morning, I'd slip on my faded ball cap, lace up my walking shoes, and head down toward the marina before the sun got too bold. Fishermen unloading early catches, joggers and headphones, the smell of sea salt and gas fumes blending together in a way only locals understand. Then I'd stop at my favorite bench overlooking the water, the one with a little plaque that read, "In loving memory of Carol, forever watching the waves." My wife. Gone 23 years now. Some losses fade. Some settle into your bones like a second skeleton. After the marina, I volunteered at the senior center. Nothing heroic, just helping other old-timers stretch their legs, play cards, share stories. Funny thing about old people, we're not afraid of death, just of dying without meaning. Then afternoons in my yard, my tomatoes, my peppers, my patchy lawn I could never coax into behaving. Evenings with Yankees games on the radio, not the TV. Radio baseball feels more honest. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was mine. And here's the part people don't like to hear. I was content. Content with my routine. Content with my memories. Content with my quiet little world. But content men don't notice storms forming on the edges of their sky. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. They weren't loud, they were quiet, polite, almost gentle in the way poison can be gentle at first. My son, Brandon, hadn't visited me more than twice in 6 months. That's just how life goes. I didn't take it personally. But then suddenly he was dropping by every week. "Just checking on you, Dad. Thought you could use some groceries. Need help with bills? Paperwork?" Back then, I thought I was witnessing a miracle. A son rediscovering his father. Hell, I even bragged about it at the senior center. My boy's finally making time for me. They all smiled politely, but I remember one of the widowers saying, "When kids come around more than usual, it's either guilt or money." I laughed it off. Old men ignore advice until it's too late. He started asking things like, "Dad, have you ever thought about simplifying your accounts? Maybe consolidating assets? What's the point of paying property taxes alone? Who's on your will?" I thought he was just being responsible, a grown man thinking about the future. But there was something in his tone, a curious edge, like he was searching for answers to questions he hadn't fully asked yet. Her name was Lana. Quiet, soft-spoken, kind in that way nervous people are kind. She looked at me with a sort of sadness, like she wanted to say something but kept swallowing it. Back then, I didn't understand. Now, I know exactly what that look was. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear for me. But I didn't see it at the time. Or I refused to. One night, over a dinner he'd brought over, Brandon said, "Dad, you've done enough. You should relax. Travel. Live a little." It sounded sweet. It sounded concerned. But now I know what it really meant. You're in the way. Still, I ignored it. Old men trust their memories more than their instincts. And my memories of him were all sweet ones. Fishing trips in St. Augustine, baseball games at Tropicana Field, his little hand gripping mine at his mother's funeral. How can a man reconcile the child he raised with the stranger planning his disappearance? He can't. Not at first. There's a kind of silence only children can give you. The kind where they're speaking to you, smiling at you, but the real versions of themselves are somewhere else entirely. He'd sit across from me, nodding, pretending to listen to my stories, but something behind his eyes was distant, cold, calculating. It was the silence of someone who's already made a decision. Now here's where the story must be honest, uncomfortably honest. Because every viral story needs a moment where the audience thinks, maybe the villain isn't fully a villain. And this is mine. I wasn't the perfect father. When he was young, I worked too much. I missed soccer games, missed school plays, missed dinners, missed moments you can't rewind. Every time I told him I'm doing this for us, I was really doing it because work felt easier than grief. After his mother died, I didn't know how to talk about pain. So I buried myself in routine and left him to grow up a little lonelier than he deserved. Maybe he resented that. Maybe he felt abandoned long before I ever felt betrayed. Does that excuse what he did? No, not even close. But it makes it human. And human stories hit harder than monsters versus angels. Why this matters? Because stories that go viral don't just shock. They stir debate. Some people will say, "He's a terrible son." Others will whisper, "No, he's a broken one." But the truth? A broken man can still be dangerous. And I didn't know just how dangerous mine had become until I stood at that terminal, holding a one-way ticket purchased with my own stolen savings, staring into the eyes of a boy I once rocked to sleep. A week before the trip, I caught Lana watching me with a terrified expression. I asked her if something was wrong. She opened her mouth, hesitated, and said, "Just take care of yourself on the cruise." But her eyes said something entirely different. They said, "Please don't go." That memory chewed at me as I walked away from the port after the confrontation in Chapter 1. It gnawed at the edges of my mind. What did she know? Who else was involved? What had my son gotten himself into?
Because when a woman looks at you like that, someone else is pulling the strings. Someone with power. Someone manipulating my boy. Someone who didn't expect an old man to walk away from that terminal alive with the truth. They underestimated me. But as I said before, old men don't break. Old men plan. And I was about to uncover the real hand behind the betrayal.
When I walked away from that boarding counter, I didn't go far. I made it just past the automatic doors, out into the Florida heat, and my legs gave out on a concrete bench facing the parking lot. Cars pulled up, trunks popped, families unloaded luggage, and life went on like the world hadn't just told me I was obsolete. My hands were still shaking. My chest felt tight. I could taste salt on my lips, but I wasn't sure if it was from the ocean air or the fact that I'd been biting the inside of my cheek just to keep from crying in front of my own son. Have you ever felt that? That quiet, ugly question in the back of your mind? Am I really that easy to get rid of? I don't know how long I sat there. A few minutes? A lifetime? Same thing at my age. But eventually, something cut through the fog. A thought. Not loud, but sharp enough to make me straighten my back. You're not crazy. You're not confused. Check the facts. That's one thing about being a retired history teacher. When people try to gaslight you, your instinct isn't to panic. It's to pull the records. So I stood up, wiped my palms on my pants, and walked back into the terminal. Alone this time. Brandon was still at the counter, arguing with the attendant when he saw me approach. His shoulders stiffened. "Dad, where are you going? I told you—" "I'm not talking to you," I said, without looking at him. "I'm talking to her." The attendant blinked as I stepped up to the counter. "Ma'am, I'd like to see every document you have attached to my booking. Not just the ticket. Everything." She hesitated, glancing between me and my son. "Sir, usually the travel agent, I paid for this trip, apparently. So I'd like to see what my money bought." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She checked my ID again, then sighed and nodded. "You have the right to view your own profile information. Give me a moment." Her nails clicked across the keys. On the monitor, I caught flashes. Reservation details, emergency contact, Brandon Hale. Payment source, H. Hale retirement account. Special notes. My jaw tightened. Then she frowned. "Oh," she murmured. "We do have one additional attachment." "Print it," I said. Behind me, my son stepped closer. "Dad, this isn't necessary. You're just working yourself up. Why don't you—" I held up my hand without turning. "Brandon, sit down." You could have heard a pin drop between us. The printer whined and spat out a few pages. She handed them to me, and I recognized the format instantly. Legal language, not cruise paperwork. Something else. The first line hit me like a fist. Statement of diminished capacity. Client Harold Hale. The world went silent. My eyes tracked each word, slow and disbelieving. The undersigned hereby attests that the above-named individual has demonstrated impaired judgment, inconsistent decision-making, diminished understanding of financial matters, and would benefit from supervised relocation and management of assets. My name. My entire life. Summarized in a paragraph that basically said, he doesn't know what he's doing anymore. At the bottom, a signature line with my printed name, a place I never signed. Beside it was a second line, Designated responsible party, Brandon Hale. And below that, a third signature, a doctor I'd only met twice, at Brandon's suggestion, for a routine checkup. I laughed, a short, harsh sound that turned a few heads in the line. You ever see your own identity stabbed in ink? It's uglier than any knife wound. Sir, are you okay? The attendant asked. I lowered the paper slowly. Ma'am, did you receive this directly from my doctor? She headed no. This was uploaded by the travel agency. They said it was required documentation because the booking was part of a care package. Care, I repeated, like the word tasted wrong. Behind me, Brandon started talking fast. Dad, listen, this is just a formality. The lawyer said it would make things smoother if anything ever happened to you. I didn't want to scare you with the legal details, So you what? I turned now, the papers crumpling slightly in my hand. Filed a declaration that your father is incompetent behind his back? He flinched. Dad, you forget things. You misplace your keys, your phone. I misplace my keys, not my damn mind. The security officer from earlier drifted closer again, watching. And here's the part I remember clearest. The look on Brandon's face wasn't just guilt. It was annoyance. Like I was making this harder than it needed to be. I talked to a lawyer, he said. He said with your age, with mom gone, with me as your only child, it just makes sense for me to oversee things. This cruise, the account management, the house. My voice dropped to a whisper. The rage was too sharp to be loud. You forged my name on a document saying I'm not capable of making my own decisions? He flinched. I signed what needed to be signed. For both of us. For both of us. People like to say that when they're really doing something for themselves. I turned back to the attendant. Can I get a copy of this? I asked. She nodded quickly, already hitting the button. Of course. As the pages came out, I gathered them carefully. They felt heavier than paper should feel. I wasn't confused. I wasn't losing my memory. I didn't imagine this. Here it was, in black and white. A one-way ticket. Paid from my retirement. Justified by a document declaring me unfit, signed in my name by someone else. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. Somewhere in the middle of it, the security officer stepped a little closer. Do you need assistance, sir? He asked. And for the first time that morning, I heard respect in the word sir. I shook my head. No, I'm fine. For now. Then I looked my son in the eyes, and what I saw there broke something inside me. Not just what he'd done, but how deeply he believed he had the right to do it. You really thought I would never see this, I said. He swallowed. Dad, I was trying to protect you from stress, from decisions you're not... Don't finish that sentence, I said softly. You've already said enough. The girlfriend, Lana, was hovering a few yards back, eyes shining with tears. She looked like she wanted to run to me, but something held her in place. Maybe fear? Maybe shame? Maybe both. I folded the papers, slid them into the inside pocket of my jacket, and adjusted my shoulders. I think that ship can sail without me. She asked, You're not boarding? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, I'll travel. But not where he thinks I'm going. I walked away from that terminal one last time.
And as those automatic doors slid open, a thought settled into my mind like an anchor dropping. My name was on a legal document I never signed, which meant this wasn't just about greed. This wasn't just about a son tired of responsibility. It meant crimes had been committed, lines crossed, systems manipulated. And I knew, with the same certainty I know the tide comes in, that my boy hadn't done all this alone. Somebody coached him. Somebody helped. Somebody wanted my house, my accounts, my signature, and my absence. They thought an old man wouldn't notice. They were wrong. Because old men don't break. Old men gather evidence. And I had just picked up the first piece.
I didn't drive home right away. That's the thing about betrayal. Your body moves, but your mind stays behind, replaying the moment your life stopped making sense. The papers in my jacket felt like they were burning through the fabric, a form declaring me incompetent, filed without my knowledge, signed in my name. If someone ever forged your identity like that, would you see it coming? Subscribe so you're not blindsided. I drove slowly, aimlessly, letting the Florida streets pass under me like a funeral procession. When I finally reached home, the house felt unfamiliar, smaller, colder, like betrayal had seeped through the walls. I pulled out the document and read each line again. Each word chipped away at who I believed I still was. Impaired judgment. Requires supervised relocation. Delegation of financial authority. They weren't just declaring me incapable. They were positioning me to disappear. And right when that thought hit, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from my son. His voice sounded calm, reasonable, practiced. Dad, you're overreacting. The lawyer said this was easier. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me. People don't protect you by erasing you. They protect themselves. Most danger comes from the people claiming they're helping. Subscribe so you don't miss signs like this. I sat in silence after the voicemail, staring into the dark like it was staring back at me. For a long moment, I felt small, insignificant, breakable. I hadn't cried like that in years. Quiet tears, the kind that feel like they're draining something essential out of you. If you've ever cried alone like that, you know the fear behind it. What if no one cares what happens to me? If loneliness scares you, stay close. Subscribe before the next twist hits. Hours passed. The house stayed dark. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't touch dinner. Just sat there holding a document that felt like a death certificate. Then, something on the second page caught my eye. A date. The signature date. The form had been filed 3 months before the cruise was ever mentioned to me. 3 months. My breath left my body. This wasn't a sudden decision. This wasn't a moment of panic or misunderstanding. This was planning, strategy, coordination. Someone had set this up long before they pretended to care. Betrayal always starts long before you notice it. Subscribe so you stay ahead of danger. I leaned back in my chair, staring into the ceiling like something inside me hardened. Not rage. Not yet. Clarity. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my son. And he wasn't losing sleep over it. But here's the thing about old men. We don't fight with fists. We don't fight with panic. We fight with memory, with patience,
with evidence. And that night when I breathed out shakily into the quiet room, I made a silent promise. You tried to erase me. Now I'll show you who I really am. If you're watching this far and still not subscribed, why? Comment what's holding you back. Because from this point forward, I wasn't the victim. I was the threat they never prepared for.
I didn't go home after the bank. Men like me, quiet old men, the kind everyone assumes will just roll over. We don't make decisions in our living rooms. We make them in motion. So I drove. Slowly, no destination. Just letting the Florida streets unwind in front of me until my breath steadied and my thoughts sharpened into something dangerous. In every man's life, there comes a moment, a single quiet moment, when he decides he will no longer be acted upon. He will act. This was that moment for me, because everything I'd discovered pointed to one truth. They were already building a world where I didn't exist. If that chills you even a little, subscribe so you never ignore danger signs again. By late afternoon, I ended up in front of the senior center. Not because I meant to, but because grief drives you to the places where you once felt harmless. I sat in the parking lot, engine running, staring at the faded mural of laughing retirees painted on the side of the building. I thought of the men inside, men who trusted their kids, men who signed papers they didn't read, men who listened when lawyers said, "It's just routine," men who vanished into care homes and never came back out. And it hit me. I was 2 signatures away from becoming one of them. You want to know real fear? Real fear is when you can picture your own erasure with scary clarity. If you've ever felt one step from losing control of your own life, subscribe now. It's how you stay ahead of the people who want that control. I turned off the engine and sat in silence. No radio, no movement. Just breathing in the truth. My son wasn't going to stop. His lawyer wasn't going to stop. The doctor who signed that form sure as hell wasn't going to stop. So, I had one choice left. Stop them first. This part isn't pretty. I sat there battling myself. One voice, the soft one, said, "Let it go. You're old. You don't have the strength for this." But the other voice, the one forged in the hardest years of my life, said, "If you don't fight this, you won't be Harold Hale anymore. You'll be whatever they decide you are." I rubbed my hands together, feeling the roughness of old skin, the strength still in my fingers. I wasn't frail. I wasn't confused. I wasn't diminished. I was angry. And you should never underestimate an old man who finally gives himself permission to be angry. Most people never fight back until it's too late. Subscribe so you're not one of them. Just as I was about to drive off again, my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. It wasn't a threat, wasn't a warning, wasn't a plea. It was a photo, a scan of another legal document, one naming my son as temporary financial conservator, filed, pending approval, hearing date 2 weeks away. 2 weeks. And below that, a signature line where my name was written in handwriting that looked almost like mine. Almost is what criminals rely on. My chest tightened. My vision narrowed. They were trying to secure total control, not next year, not eventually, right now.
And someone scared, someone on the inside, had just slipped me this evidence. You never know who's quietly rooting for you to survive. Subscribe before the next reveal. There's more in the shadows. I put the phone down on my passenger seat, and then I said it out loud, to no one but myself. Enough. My voice was steady, low, unshakable. I'd spent months letting other people write my story, but that ended in this parking lot. Because in every war, and yes, this was a war, there is a moment when the losing side decides it's done losing. This was mine. I turned the key in the ignition. My next destination was obvious. A lawyer of my own, not the one they picked. One who knew how to dismantle a fraudulent conservatorship brick by brick. Because now, I had proof, motive, a whistleblower, a timeline, unauthorized withdrawals, and a forged declaration of incapacity. Most men my age would crumble under that, but I've lived long enough to know something they never teach you. The person everyone writes off is the person they should fear the most. If you're still watching and not subscribed yet, what's stopping you? Comment your reason. I pulled out of that parking lot with a folder full of evidence beside me, a head full of strategy, and a heart full of something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. My son wanted a world where I didn't exist. Now, he was about to discover the price of trying to erase a man who remembers everything.
The next morning, I woke up before the sun, not out of habit, out of necessity. War doesn't wait for breakfast. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and spread out everything I had. The forged mental capacity form, the conservatorship filing, the bank withdrawals, the time-stamped documents Lana had secretly sent, notes from the doctor's website, my own scribbles from the night before. I didn't see paperwork. I saw a battlefield. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized something. I wasn't outnumbered. I was ahead. People who betray you always assume you won't investigate. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, subscribe now so you catch warning signs early. I opened my address book, the real one, the paper one. Old men don't keep their most important contacts on a device someone else can access. Halfway down the H section, I saw a name, Casey Durham, a former student of mine, now a lawyer in St. Petersburg. He once told me, "You ever need help, Mr. Hale? Just call. I owe you." At the time, I'd laughed. Today, I wasn't laughing. I dialed. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Hale, everything okay?" "No," I said, "and I need you to keep this conversation private." The tone of his voice shifted instantly. I explained everything, calmly, slowly, fact by fact. I didn't embellish a thing. I didn't need to. When I finished, he exhaled sharply. "Sir, this is coordinated elder fraud, conservatorship abuse, forgery, maybe more." "I figured," I said. "And you're telling me your signature is forged on multiple filings?" "Yes." He paused. "Mr. Hale, they could have institutionalized you with this paperwork." My blood ran cold. Institutionalized, locked away, silent, powerless, forgotten. If the thought of losing control of your own life terrifies you, subscribe. Your awareness is your shield. I can help you," I asked. "Help you," he repeated. "Sir, I'm clearing my morning. Bring me everything." And just like that, I had my ally. Before I left the house, I checked the mailbox. Inside was something that turned my stomach. A letter. From the same law firm working with my son. Notice of proposed property transfer. Property transfer. My home. My land. My sanctuary. The document said, pending conservatorship approval, property may be transferred for the benefit of the conservatee. For my benefit. What a generous way to say, we're taking your house. Most betrayals hide behind polite language. Subscribe so you learn to read the danger between the lines. I shoved the letter into my folder. This wasn't just removal anymore. This was extraction, a hostile takeover disguised as family concern. And they almost pulled it off. Before leaving for Casey's office, I logged into my retirement account just to check, just to be sure. My hand froze on my mouse. Another pending withdrawal, scheduled for the end of the week. A large one, 5 digits, labeled long-term placement preparation. They had already chosen a care facility. They were preparing the payment. They were preparing my disappearance. If I hadn't discovered this when I did, I wouldn't be telling this story right now. Most people don't realize the final step of a scheme until the door closes. Subscribe before someone closes a door on you. I froze all withdrawals, set new passwords, enabled 2-step verification with Casey's help. The bank flagged my account for fraud investigation. Then, just for good measure, I purchased a small safe from the hardware store and locked the physical documents inside. Not because I feared losing them, because I feared someone returning for them. Old men aren't paranoid. Old men have history. Casey's office was in a modest building above a coffee shop. No flashy signs, no marble floors. Just wooden walls, good sense, and someone who actually listened. I handed him the folder. He read every document, every signature, every date. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Sir, they were 14 days away from having legal power over your life." My jaw tightened. "And now?" I asked. He smiled, the kind of smile predators fear. "And now," he repeated, "now we burn their entire plan to the ground. If you've ever wanted to see justice served, subscribe. This fight's just beginning." Then he laid out the strategy. File a fraud complaint. Submit a handwriting analysis request. Freeze conservatorship proceedings. Issue a cease and desist to the doctor. Notify the court that documents were filed without consent. Prepare counter litigation. Document every withdrawal, every attempt, every manipulation. This wasn't just a plan. This was a counterattack. Quiet, deadly, legal, precise. And the best part? He said, "They don't know you know. That gives us leverage." Leverage. What a beautiful word. Before I left, I asked the question that had been eating at me. "Casey, do you think my son is the mastermind behind this?" He hesitated. "No," he said quietly, "but he's willing. Someone else is steering the ship. The lawyer, the doctor, someone who profits when old men become incapable. And maybe, just maybe, someone influencing my son more than I ever realized." Betrayal rarely starts with the person you think. Subscribe so you don't miss the truth when it comes. I walked out of that office taller than I walked in. My heart was steady, my mind was sharp, my enemy was defined. And the people who thought they could decide my fate were about to learn how dangerous a man becomes the moment he chooses to fight back.
I didn't sleep the night before my first strike. Not because of fear, because of clarity. People think old age dulls a man, but let me tell you something. There is nothing sharper than an old man finally pushed too far. By sunrise, I was already dressed, documents packed, mind calm in a way only purpose can make it calm. I was no longer stumbling through betrayal. I was marching toward justice. They wanted me gone. They wanted my home, my accounts, my autonomy. Well, now I wanted something too. Accountability. And old men don't chase it with fists. We chase it with truth. Most people never realize truth is a weapon until it's too late. Subscribe now So you see the danger coming first. Casey, my lawyer, didn't waste time. He filed an emergency motion to halt the conservatorship proceedings, filed fraud complaints, requested a court audit. But he insisted on one thing. I need you present today, Mr. Hale. In person, looking sharp, speaking clearly. Let them see exactly how incompetent you are. So I shaved, put on my good shirt, the one Carol bought me on our 25th anniversary. By the time I stepped into the courthouse lobby, I felt like a ghost walking into his own funeral. Except this time, I was the one holding the shovel. As we walked toward the probate clerk's office, Casey leaned in. "You have no idea you're coming. No idea these documents were submitted by you personally. No idea you've secured legal representation." A slow smile crept across my face. Good. Let the guilty stay comfortable for one last moment. At the clerk's window, Casey slid the forged documents across the counter like a blackjack dealer laying down a perfect hand. "Ma'am, these signatures were falsified. We are requesting an immediate freeze on all actions related to this conservatorship." The clerk's eyebrows lifted. She glanced at me. "Sir, did you authorize any of this?" I looked her in the eyes, steady, unblinking, clear as day. "No," I said. "I'm perfectly capable of handling my own affairs." She examined me for a moment, my posture, my tone, my awareness. People underestimate old men, but clerks see everything. Within minutes, she stamped the documents. Freeze across one leg, notigits, under review. I felt something crack loose inside me, something heavy I'd been carrying since the cruise terminal. Not relief, power. Losing your freedom is terrifying. Getting it back is electrifying. Most people don't know how fast control can shift. Subscribe if you want to stay on the winning side of a story like this. Next up, the medical office. Casey insisted we confront the doctor face-to-face before filing the medical fraud complaint. We walked in without an appointment. The receptionist started her usual script until Casey flashed his card. "We're here to see Dr. Langford, immediately." The shift in her posture told me everything. She knew, or at least she suspected exactly why we were there. After a few minutes, the doctor appeared. His smile was tight, professional, rehearsed. "Mr. Hale, is everything all right?" I pulled the forged capacity statement from my folder and placed it on the counter between us. "Doctor," I calmly said, "where was I when I supposedly signed this?" He swallowed. "Well, it was a general assessment." I didn't ask what it was. I asked where I was. His eyes darted, betraying fear before he could mask it. Casey stepped forward. "Doctor, you submitted a legal declaration without conducting a cognitive exam. You filed it with a travel agency. You signed off on a conservatorship recommendation without patient consent. And now you're going to explain, on record, who instructed you to do so." The doctor's face drained of color. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was confession. If someone ever stays quiet when the truth could save them, subscribe. That silence means danger. Casey rolled up the document. "We'll see you in court." And we walked out. Now came the part I'd been waiting for. The law firm. The puppeteers behind my son's concern. We stepped through their glass doors into a marble lobby that smelt like money and bad intentions. A young attorney greeted us. "Do you have an appointment?" Casey handed him a sealed envelope. "No, but your partners will want to see this." He opened it, read the first page, then the second. His face changed. Fear, panic, recognition. Who gave you these? Casey didn't blink. Your client's target. He swallowed. Hard. Within minutes, we were escorted into a conference room where 2 senior partners waited. They thought we were there to negotiate. We weren't. Casey laid out everything. Forged signatures, manipulated filings, medical fraud, unauthorized withdrawals, conservatorship abuse, preparation for involuntary placement. By the time he finished, both lawyers looked like men watching their careers slide off a cliff. "Gentlemen," Casey said, "your next steps are simple. Withdraw all filings, provide written admission of misrepresentation, and cease all contact with Mr. Hale." One of them cleared his throat. "And your son?" I folded my hands in front of me. "My son," I said. "My son made his choices. Now he'll live with their consequences." Most people break when facing lawyers, but when lawyers break facing you, subscribe. That's when the story turns. Hours later, I returned to my house, my home, armed with freezes, suspensions, evidence, and a lawyer ready to go nuclear if needed. The first thing I did? Change the locks. Not because I feared burglars, because I feared family. And as the last screw tightened, I realized something. I was no longer playing defense. This was offense. And tomorrow would be the day I confront the person who betrayed me most. My son. If you've ever needed to face someone who broke you, subscribe now. The next chapter hits hard.
I waited until sundown to confront my son. Not because I was afraid, because some conversations deserve darkness. Some truths are too heavy for daylight. And betrayal, real betrayal, needs the quiet of night so every lie echoes. I parked outside his house in Tampa, a nice place, bigger than he could afford on his salary, bigger than he could afford even with Lana's help. Now I knew why. The missing money. My missing money. I sat in the truck a moment, breathing slow, letting the weight of the confrontation settle over me like armor. This wasn't going to be a shouting match. It wasn't going to be emotional. It was going to be surgical. Old men are loud. We're precise. If you ever prepared yourself to confront someone who betrayed you, subscribe, because this is where stories turn. I rang the doorbell. He answered almost immediately. When he saw me, his expression shifted. Not to guilt, not to shame, but to irritation, like I was an unexpected chore. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I stepped past him into the hallway, without asking permission. He didn't stop me. Conscience weakens a man's spine. "Where's Lana?" I asked. He frowned. "Out? Why?" "Because she's the only person in this house with a conscience." His jaw tightened. "Dad, look, if this is about the cruise, you're blowing things out of proportion. Sit." I pointed to the dining table. Something in my tone, something ancient, something he hadn't heard since he was a boy, made him obey. He sat. I placed the forged capacity statement on the table between us. Then the conservatorship filing. Then the bank withdrawals. One document at a time, like cards in a game he didn't realize he was losing. His face strained of color. "Dad, I can explain." "That's good," I said, taking the chair opposite him. "Because I'm done being lied to." He picked up the forged capacity form, hands shaking. I thought this would help you." "In what world," I asked quietly, "does erasing a man help him?" He swallowed. "I didn't erase you. You weren't doing well. You forget things. You repeat stories. I thought you needed help." "No," I said.
You needed help. Financial help. His eyes flickered. And there it was. The truth. Small, ugly, rotten. Most betrayals don't come from hate. They come from weakness. Subscribe if you've ever seen someone's weakness turn dangerous. He dropped the papers and leaned back, face pale. Dad, I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. And not by accident. He rubbed his face. Dad, you don't understand. I was drowning. Bills, debt. Lana doesn't know half of it. I just needed some help. You could have asked, I said. I did, he snapped. You always said no. Said you needed to save. Said you were preparing for the future. Dad, I am your future. Ah, there it was. Not greed, entitlement. The quiet poison of our generation gap. Your mother and I worked so you wouldn't grow up with nothing. Not so you could take everything. He laughed, bitter, sharp. What's the point of you keeping all this money? You live alone. You sit around gardening, going to senior centers. You mean living, I said. He froze. People hate being confronted with their own self-deception. Subscribe so you don't fall for someone else's version of what you deserve. I leaned forward. Who told you to file these? No one? I did it on my own. Don't lie to me. His eyes darted away. I pressed harder. Was it the lawyer or the doctor? He swallowed. The lawyer said it was completely legal. He said it was normal, said it would protect you and secure your assets. He said I could avoid probate complications if things went badly. And when were things supposed to go badly? Silence. Louder than any confession. Most people don't plan your downfall suddenly. They plan it gradually, comfortably. Subscribe if you refuse to let someone plan your ending. I stood. For the first time in my life, my son looked at me, afraid of me. Not because of violence, but because I finally saw him clearly. Dad, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It went exactly as you pushed it. He looked up at me, eyes wet. Are you going to ruin my life? I shook my head. No, son. You ruined your own. I'm just done shielding you from the consequences. His face crumpled, and it hurt. God, it hurt. But not enough to undo what he'd done. You can love someone and still hold them accountable. Subscribe if you believe accountability is the only path to redemption. I gathered the documents into my folder. My lawyer will contact you. You are to stay away from me. Do not access my accounts. Do not enter my home. Do not file anything else in my name. He whispered, Dad, I'm your son. I paused at the doorway. Yes, I said quietly. And that made this betrayal the most painful of my life. Then I opened the door, stepped out into the night, and left him sitting alone at the table, a grown man surrounded by the wreckage of his own choices. The cool air hit my face like baptism. I felt lighter, stronger, whole. Old men don't break. Old men don't disappear. Old men rise. And the people who tried to erase me, they were about to learn exactly what survival looks like. If you're still here and haven't subscribed, what's holding you back? Comment below.